In this video, we're going to take a look at creating an exploded view of the selfie stick assembly we did in Activity 213 for the IED curriculum. This process is going to be very similar. When you create an exploded view, it's going to be the same process for no matter what product that you're going to be working with. So this can be applied to a lot of different objects. One thing I'm going to show you though is before we get going into the exploded view is I did change the orientation of the selfie stick as we were doing the assembly. And looking at when we go to explode, we're probably going to be moving a lot of the components vertically. So like pulling the parts out. So it may not fit real well onto a horizontal, maybe B size page or even A size. Typically there are a lot of horizontal orientations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and adjust my position. If I get it kind of close, I'm going to use the view cube and I'm going to click on the corner here, and that'll get it aligned isometrically with the X, Y, and Z axes. I'm going to hit the little drop down arrow. I'm going to say set current view as home and say fit to view. I'm going to click on where it says bottom, and then I'm going to say set current view as front. There you'll see the view cube changes. If I press the home button, now you'll see your view cube reads in the right directions and it's in the position that you want it to be in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save when I do that. And I'm just going to say OK for the version saved. So we can always add a little description if we wanted to, like orientation changed or something like that. But I'm going to change to a different workspace. So from design, we're going to go to animation. And it's going to load our selfie stick here into the animation workspace. So right now it's going to show at this point I've got one change. I might hit undo. So anytime I make any motion or movements, it's going to add that movement here into our particular timeline. So here's what I want to do is I want to start pulling apart the different pieces of my selfie stick, and we can do that utilizing some options in transform components. And with this I'm going to use manual explode. There's a couple ways that you can do that, and there's some auto explode options, but really the best case to get full control is through manual explode or through transform components. So I'm going to choose manual explode, choose my selfie stick bottom. I want to choose which direction that I want it to go in, and then also through this menu I want to go ahead and turn on the trail line visibility, and then there's a slider that will allow me to go through and move that out. So maybe about halfway, so you'll be able to see that when I do that, you're going to be able to see how far away that is. Maybe halfway is a little bit too much, and then we'll bring that back a little bit. But once we get that set, I'm going to go ahead and hit the green check mark. You'll see it shows which component was selected and what we did. We did a movement on that particular part. The other way you can do that is using transform components. Sometimes when you're using, depending on certain assemblies, you may go through in the slider option, you may not get enough distance away from the other parts. This is a little bit more of a free form. So here I'm going to choose the selfie stick top. I'm going to click the arrow. I want to turn on the trail line visibility from the menu here, and then I can actually just kind of click and drag and kind of place it where I need it to be. And then I can go ahead and say OK. And that's another way, and you can see it shows you the exact same movement for that part. So, but for the rest of this, I'm going to zoom in up here at the top. I'm going to take a look at manual explode. This one's going to work pretty well with manual explode. So I'm going to choose this component next. We have to pull this part out, and as we kind of go along and do that. So the only issue with this is it looks like I've still got one component that's still being selected and tied in there, and it's moving both of those at the same time. So what I might need to do is hit the X button, and when I go to do that, apparently the manual explode does go through and is somehow getting. Okay, I must have had both of those selected by accident. I must not have deselected from the previous one. But one thing to kind of watch out for, and I can pull this part out and then go ahead and hit the green check mark. All right, manual explode again. So I must have hit, so here I didn't have this one deselected. So I'll hit the red X. Make sure you deselect your parts. And then as I choose here, choose which direction, choose which explosion, how far away, and we want to show trails. Hit the green check mark, and you just continue to go ahead and follow that process. You'll notice there is a, I keep going up here and pressing that particular key. The E key will also go through and give me a shortcut in order to do so. So let me go ahead and adjust that explosion scale, deselect the part, and just continue on. Again, getting used to knowing the keyboard shortcuts is kind of helpful as well. So it looks like I got a couple of parts here. There we go. Pull this one out. So my key that I always tell my students is that when we're looking at something, we want to make sure that we are able to see everything fully, and that we don't want to go through and have any sort of covering up of any parts. There we go. And then this top piece, we can see that those are going to kind of fit together. So as we do that, there's going to be some things that we can end up doing. So you'll see there's some different motion that goes along there that gets attracted as well. So here, any of the components, you can go back to these steps, and you can, edit the action a little bit and be able to set some of those together. So, but if I go along, drag this slider back, scrub back to 0 in this case, and I can always go through, hit the play button, always go back to the start, hit play, and this will show some of the different motions and things like that. It'll zoom in and play through some of the different parts as it was kind of moved out a little bit. Alright, so pretty neat little animation. Some things here we may go through and take a look at some of the parts, as we look, as far as this will extend. You'll notice there's a little arrow here to extend the trails. If we want to go through and transform the components, I may try to bring this a little closer, still displaying the trail lines, and I may go through and do the same thing with the selfie stick bottom. So we'll bring these a little closer. So we don't want necessarily a huge amount of space between them. It will go through when you go to play. You can always go through and kind of play with some of the playback and everything. But one thing you'll end up doing is you want to make sure all the parts are being shown fully. None are covering each other up. And there we go. So that's really kind of what we're working with. So you can always publish a video as well if you want to publish some animation of that to be able to show to a client or anything of that nature. But really, when you go through and you hit the save button, you're going to be able to go forward and create a drawing from this. And this is the process that we would take. So you're always welcome to take a look at some of the auto explode methods, but in past experience with some other CAD programs, the auto explode sometimes still requires you to do some manual explosion, and that's why we kind of focused on doing a manual explosion method in this video.